$3.8 billion every year. That's how much the United States sends to Israel in military aid. But in recent months, this long-standing relationship has come under scrutiny like never before. Across the United States, protests have erupted, with people demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and questioning the flow of American taxpayer dollars to Israel's military. One protester summarized the growing frustration: "If you want my tax dollars, you better listen to me." This sentiment captures the mood of many who are pushing for a re-evaluation of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Since World War II, the United States has given more aid to Israel than any other country, but calls for accountability are growing louder. The changing political climate: traditionally, aid to Israel has enjoyed broad bipartisan support in Congress. However, recent debates have challenged this consensus. Lawmakers like Senator Bernie Sanders are leading the charge, raising questions about how U.S. aid is being used and whether it aligns with American values. Earlier this year, Sanders introduced a resolution aimed at conditioning aid to Israel on a human rights report. "This is a simple request for accountability. How is our money being used?" Sanders asked on the Senate floor. His proposal would have required the State Department to examine whether Israel had committed human rights violations in Gaza. While the resolution was overwhelmingly rejected in a 72-11 vote, it marked a historic moment. For the first time, senators publicly debated the issue of U.S. aid to Israel. A political analyst commented on the significance of this development. "The fact that this was even brought up shows that the conversation is changing. Just a few years ago, criticizing aid to Israel was political suicide, not anymore." Historical context: U.S.-Israel relations. To understand why U.S. aid to Israel is such a sensitive topic, it's essential to examine its historical roots. In 1948, the United States became the first country to recognize Israel as a state. Initially, U.S. support was modest, consisting of small loans to help resettle Holocaust survivors. But by the 1970s, the relationship had transformed into a cornerstone of American foreign policy in the Middle East. During the Yom Kippur War in 1973, the United States provided critical military support to Israel, helping it repel coordinated attacks by Egypt and Syria. This period solidified Israel as a key ally in the region, especially as it faced threats from Soviet-aligned states. The Camp David Accords, brokered by the United States in 1978, further deepened the partnership, with U.S. aid becoming a central component of the agreement. By the late 20th century, U.S. assistance had shifted entirely to military aid, ensuring that Israel maintained a qualitative military edge over its neighbors. The role of U.S. aid today. Today, U.S. aid plays a critical role in Israel's defense strategy. Annual foreign military financing grants from the U.S. represent about 16% of Israel's military budget. This funding ensures that Israel has first access to advanced U.S. defense technology, such as the Iron Dome missile defense system. It also offsets military sales to neighboring countries, with the U.S. often arranging to sell the same weapons to Israel to maintain its advantage. This strategy has been a fixture of U.S. foreign policy for decades. As President Joe Biden recently stated, Israel and America are connected now and forever. However, this unwavering support is no longer taken for granted. Progressive lawmakers and activists are increasingly questioning whether unconditional aid is appropriate, especially in light of ongoing conflicts in Gaza. The growing divide in Congress: for decades, U.S. aid to Israel faced little resistance in Congress. Bipartisan support was strong, with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle emphasizing Israel's strategic importance to American interests. But in recent years, this consensus has started to erode. Progressive Democrats have been vocal in their criticism, calling for aid to be conditioned on Israel's adherence to human rights standards. "Do not count me in to give another $10 billion to a right-wing extremist government in Israel," Sanders said during the recent Senate debate. This sentiment is shared by an increasing number of lawmakers who argue that American values demand greater accountability from its allies. Despite these challenges, major aid packages to Israel still enjoy broad support. Last year, President Biden requested $14.3 billion in additional assistance to Israel, including $10.6 billion for the Pentagon to replenish Israel's Iron Dome system and other defense needs. Israel must have what it needs to protect its people today and always, Biden said. The broader implications. the debate over U.S. aid to Israel goes beyond dollars and cents. It's about the role America plays on the global stage and the values it chooses to uphold. Critics argue that unconditional aid enables human rights abuses, while supporters contend that Israel is a vital ally in a volatile region. One thing is clear, the conversation is changing. The fact that lawmakers are openly debating these issues signals a significant shift in the political landscape. Just the fact that this was brought to the Senate floor shows that we're in a new era, one analyst noted. Looking ahead, as the U.S. continues to navigate its relationship with Israel, questions of accountability and transparency will likely remain at the forefront. While major aid packages are still expected to pass, the growing scrutiny suggests that future agreements may come with more strings attached. For his part, Senator Sanders has vowed to keep pushing for accountability. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We must ensure that our foreign policy aligns with our values." The pressure from activists and public opinion. The changing dynamic within Congress is not happening in a vacuum. Across the United States, the growing pressure from activists, advocacy groups, and the public has been impossible to ignore. From college campuses to major city streets, there has been a surge in protests, calls for boycotts, and grassroots movements pushing for a reevaluation of U.S. foreign policy. These voices are demanding that U.S. taxpayers' money is used in ways that reflect a broader commitment to human rights, democracy, and international law. This shift is particularly evident among younger generations. Polls have shown that younger Americans, particularly millennials and Gen Z, are more likely to question the U.S.-Israel relationship, especially in light of the ongoing humanitarian crises in Gaza. For them, the traditional justification of Israel's security needs is often overshadowed by concerns about the treatment of Palestinians and the lack of a meaningful peace process. A recent poll conducted by the Brookings Institution found that a significant portion of young Americans believe that U.S. aid to Israel should be conditioned on its adherence to human rights standards, a sentiment that has become more common among progressive activists and left-leaning politicians. This growing divide between older and younger generations on the issue of Israel underscores a broader shift in American foreign policy discourse. The impact on U.S. foreign policy. The debate over U.S. support for Israel has broader implications for American foreign policy. For decades, the U.S. has prioritized its relationship with Israel, viewing it as a vital strategic ally in the Middle East, a key counterbalance to adversaries like Iran, and a staunch partner in combating terrorism. This alliance has been critical in shaping U.S. policies in the region, from military interventions to peace negotiations. But the changing political climate, along with increasing calls for accountability, could force the U.S. to rethink its approach to the Middle East. If lawmakers continue to push for conditions on aid, it could reshape the way the U.S. interacts with Israel and other allies in the region. The question remains, will the U.S. be willing to risk its relationship with Israel in exchange for a stronger commitment to human rights? While some critics warn that reducing aid could destabilize the region or embolden U.S. adversaries, others argue that withholding aid may be the only way to hold Israel accountable for its actions and influence a shift toward a more just and lasting peace in the region. There are also concerns that the U.S.'s unwavering support of Israel might be alienating potential allies in the Arab world and beyond, especially as global power dynamics evolve. The role of the international community. The United States is not the only country with a stake in Israel's future. As international pressure on Israel mounts, global organizations like the United Nations and the European Union are becoming more vocal in their criticism of Israeli policies toward Palestinians. These international actors have increasingly called for a two-state solution and a halt to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. However, the U.S.'s veto power in the UN Security Council has allowed Israel to sidestep many international resolutions that might have held it accountable for its actions. The shift in U.S. domestic politics, driven by growing calls for accountability, could influence how the U.S. navigates its role in international diplomacy concerning Israel and Palestine. A turning point in U.S.-Israel relations. The debate over U.S. military aid to Israel is not just a matter of dollars and cents. It is a reflection of broader shifts in U.S. domestic and foreign policy. As public opinion evolves, so too must the way America approaches its alliances and its role in the world. Whether the U.S. will continue to prioritize its relationship with Israel without condition, or whether it will embrace a new, more balanced approach remains to be seen. One thing is certain. The conversation is far from over. The increased scrutiny of U.S. aid to Israel and the changing political climate suggest that the days of unquestioned support are numbered. What happens next could redefine not only the U.S.-Israel relationship but also the United States' place in the global order.